This is Community Forum, a public affairs presentation of Mackenzie River Broadcasting. Each week, we learn about issues affecting our community with your host, Tracy Berry.
June is National Elder Abuse Awareness Month. It's a time to focus not only on identifying and preventing the abuse of older adults, often by family members or caregivers, but being more alert to situations as people age when they might not be able to care for themselves and neglect becomes a big issue. Our guest this morning is Jeff Clark. He's a lead worker with Adult Protective Services. That's part of Senior and Disability Services right here in Lane County. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Elder abuse, it can take many forms. It can take a variety of forms simultaneously. Give people an overview. Let them know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so we've actually got 9 types of abuse that we look at. So financial, unlawful restraint, neglect, abandonment, sexual, physical, involuntary seclusion, emotional, verbal, and self-neglect. And I think personally, self-neglect is one of the ones that I'm really passionate about.
People who are just living on their own and not taking care of themselves and things.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, where, someone may be having capacity issues. They're losing dementia, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, or even just infections. And they're not doing a very good job of managing their, monthly bills, their resources, taking care of themselves, not wanting to ask for help or accept help when it's offered. And so really we're the kind of canary in the coal mine that's going out there trying to convince people like, maybe you should really accept some help here, that these things will help you stay in your home and keep you going for a bit longer.
That's always a hard thing sometimes, though, because people have, you've been independent all your life and you don't want to always, you may know that you're not keeping up with everything, but it can be difficult.
It really can be. I say that we're often kind of the strong American frontiersmen, especially Oregon. We were the frontier of the Wild West back in the day, and that we really haven't lost that. And so asking for help is one of the bravest things that people can do when you actually know that I can't do everything by myself and that I need someone else to really make sure that I can do all of these things so I can live the most dignified and, happiest, safest life possible.
I'm guessing a lot of times the clients aren't the ones who are calling you going, I'm having trouble handling things. It gets referred because someone else, friend, family member, neighbor is noticing something's just not right.
Absolutely. Yeah. When someone notices a change of, hey, this isn't dad, or this isn't my neighbor, or this isn't the person that I see every week at the grocery store, and it's just like something's off with that person. Those are the really key things that we're trying to clue into. If a individual called us themselves, we actually would most likely refer that to Aging and Disability Resource Connection, which is another division of Senior and Disability Services that help people connect with resources. If somebody is asking for resources, that's great. Those are easy. And fortunately, someone else gets to help them with that. So I'm out to help all of the people that don't necessarily know about the resources, don't know about what their options are, and really trying to provide them with, safety and choice so that they can stay living the life that they want.
What are some of the things that you consider warning signs when someone's living alone? I mean, the pandemic and the isolation of that has really aggravated things. So, I mean, how do you know?
Well, as I talked about, changes is a huge thing. Is the person having past due medical bills? Are they having overdrawn bank accounts? Things like that. Are the newspapers piling up? Are they unable to get to the store as often? Did somebody come over for dinner and get served inedible food or food that might be bad? Is the person regressing and missing appointments? Are they unable to keep up on like a standard, lunch date that they might have with a loved one or friend? Are they missing doctor's appointments and not getting to them on time, or showing up at doctor's appointments when they don't have an appointment scheduled? So all of those can be real, warning signs that something is going on. Getting lost when they're driving, when they have been there 100 times or 1,000 times, and yet they can't get to the grocery store down the street.
I was remembering an older friend that we had who started showing some of those signs, and yet the challenge was trying to discuss with his family, and they didn't live in town. And I don't think they really understood how much of a difference was developing until they actually came to visit one time and saw it.
And that's a real key point that you bring up, that a lot of times we are the boots on the ground to steal a military term, because families don't always live nearby their loved ones. And so who can they trust when they're not there in person to see what's going on? So there are plenty of times I've called people in Minnesota and Florida or back east, or even arranged via the internet to talk to people in Germany and overseas. There's a complete range from connecting people with private case management to helping someone apply for Medicaid in-home services, helping them apply for Medicaid where they would get on going to an assisted living or a memory care, to sometimes we end up getting a neighbor or a pastor or someone else that's important in their life to act as a power of attorney or a healthcare power of attorney, because those are different in the state of Oregon. Sometimes we're hiring caregivers, helping them to set up and arrange for people to come to their home. Sometimes, one time I worked out just a code with neighbors out in the country where if certain lights weren't on, they knew that the person probably had a fall and they needed to go over and check on them. And that kept the person safe for a little while longer. Meals on Wheels is a great resource for people and making sure they get a nutritious meal and have that live contact with an individual that can say if they're okay. Sometimes we're helping people connect with Older Americans Act programs such as RideSource, the Senior Companion Program. Sometimes it's, simply the Family Caregiver Respite Program. Communities of faith that have programs that people will help with or assist with. And sometimes they just have amazing friends and neighbors that rally behind someone to really make sure that they're safe, that they say, gosh, someone might have to do this for me in the future, so I'm going to pay it forward and do it for them.
So that's when a person's living alone, when they're isolated. Sometimes more alarming are when there's a trusted caregiver, a family member, or, someone who's coming in and there's abuse tied to that.
We only hurt the ones we love. Most of the perpetrators of abuse are people who are only in a position of power already, that we're talking sons, son-in-laws, stepsons, daughters, daughter-in-laws, stepdaughters, other family members, and then various paid and unpaid caregivers. And that's over 75% of all of our perpetrators. So these are people in positions of power that are already close to the individual and generally trusted.
And a lot of times, even though someone may know they're being victimized, they're really hesitant to report it, or they're not able to report it.
Yeah, adults have to make judgment calls and weigh the pros and cons of whatever choice they're going to make. So it's certainly wrong, but they may lose access to other family members, for example, grandkids. That relationship may be severely damaged if they choose to report the abuse. And so sometimes we see one form of abuse leading to another form of abuse, that you may have some self-neglect going on with the individual that lets them be confused and exploited financially by someone that they love. Or maybe it's a verbal threat related to compelling some sort of a behavior, or I'm not going to change you or clean you up or help you shower if you don't do X, Y, and Z for me. So it can be very devastating. And these are people that are close. It's very rare that it's the door-to-door salesman or the person across town. It certainly can be, but mostly it's people in positions of power.
I can put you in an institution. That's one big threat that,
Oh my
you've heard over
gosh,
the years.
yeah. And sometimes that is literally the worst thing in the world for someone. And sometimes a lot of people don't understand the options and the freedom and the choices that they have related to assisted livings or adult foster care or residential care facilities, and how they're not these subclinical nursing home types things. And nursing homes are wonderful, and they fill a very important medical need for people, but they don't feel like home. And so some of the facilities can really be a great option for people going forward to make sure that their needs are met, especially when you have intermittent needs that are unpredictable, that you don't know when you're going to need help, but you need to be able to push a button and have someone come help you. And, sadly, abuse happens there as well. And we're there to help when that does happen as well.
And sometimes it's a basic thing where they know someone's not treating them well, but they either don't want to get that person in trouble, or they're just ashamed to admit that they're being victimized.
It is hard to admit. And, adults report elder abuse at a rate of 1 in 10 per year. And I've heard surveys as high as 1 in 6 per year from the WHO. And so if you think about knowing 10 adults who are over age 65 in your personal life, from parents or siblings, neighbors, friends, if you know 10 people, then statistically, you know someone who was abused in the last year. And if you don't know who that person is, I'd ask you, why not? It's because it's a hidden form of abuse that is really wrapped up in these issues of family and power and control and shame. And there's a huge amount of shame that comes with elder abuse of how could this happen to me? And that's a loved one. There's no way they're actually doing that to me, and actually realizing that no, that is verbal abuse, or no, that is neglect, and they're not doing right by me.
So when that happens, and if you realize that there's an abusive situation going on in your family or among a family that's close to you, what do you do? How do you even know who to report that to, and what's possible?
In the state of Oregon, regardless of where you are, you can call 855-503-SAFE, which is 855-503-7233. And it's an automated system that will have you dial by zip code. If you don't know the zip code, you'll get to leave a message in a general box, and then they'll route it to the correct zip code. If you're local here in Lane County, give us a call, 541-682-4140, and you'll talk to an actual abuse investigator that does the screening. We're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
So when you're contacted or you receive a referral from the hotline, what happens? How's that process work?
Sure. We take that information, we put it into our computer system, we evaluate that information and compare it to the different abuse types. You don't have to know what type of abuse you're calling on. Just call us about something bad that's happened that you're worried about, and then we will filter it through that and try and determine, does this fit neglect, or does it fit verbal abuse, or whatever it is. And then we will determine a response time. About 90% of our response times are a next day response. So generally, once we complete the screening, someone is going to be making contact with that alleged victim the next day by the close of business. And we're going to talk to them about what is going on, find out what they want to do about it, if they think it's a problem. We have a semi-technical term called the big yelly family. Some families, if you yell the loudest, that's how you communicate. Some families, if you raise your voice, that is just like, oh my gosh, what did I do to offend you? I'm so sorry. And so we really look at, what does the individual want to do to try and balance things out for them when they are disadvantaged due to age, disability, cognitive impairment, just all of those things that come with aging that might make it difficult for them to stand up against an able-bodied abuser.
Do you find that some abusers are stunned to realize that their behavior is abusive?
It does happen, and really the ones that are stunned, you have more hope for sometimes, because they're going, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was hurting them, or I didn't realize, I thought that we could just talk that way, or I thought it was okay. And so you have some hope for redemption sometimes with those individuals. The people that know they were doing wrong and still chose to do it are kind of the most disheartening ones out there. I think deep down that most people do know what's right and wrong, how to basically treat other people with respect and dignity, and to ask for help if they're not able to do it on their own, even though it might be hard. And so you really want to make sure that those individuals are engaging the services that can keep people safe and dignified and cared for, because we all come into this world with caregivers, loved ones taking care of us. And most of us go out of the world the same way that we have, loved ones taking care of us as well.
So if people who are the caregivers and the abusers aren't willing to make some changes, what happens next?
So substantiated abuse can sometimes affect people's ability to work in certain professions or be able to be paid in those professions. For example, if they were working in a role with Medicaid, if they were working in a licensed care facility, it can affect their ability to work in those roles. Most of what we do is work within the bounds of the person's own systems that are available, whether those are social systems or legal systems, helping them get a restraining order, for example, helping them do an eviction process, referring them to legal aid or senior law, really trying to connect them with the people that will help them, empower them to live the life that they want to live going forward. And there's really hard times when people don't want to do something, where they have decided that their life is better with whatever abuse is going on because of some other benefit or situation that they weigh more strongly in favor of continuing the life that they have. Those are some of the most difficult ones, but it's that individual's choice. And as long as they have capacity to make that choice, we let adults engage in all kinds of dangerous activities, everything from skydiving to motorcycle racing. And you don't lose the right to make a choice that's contrary to other people just because you turn 65. We just want to make sure that you really can make that choice and that you are free from undue influence and that you have the opportunity to live that life that you're wanting to live.
That's where some of the emotional abuse or the threats to like withhold visits with grandkids or things like that become so potent.
Just very devastating. And in Oregon, we do have a very narrow grandparents' rights statute that indicates that if an adult has put forth a relationship with a child, but it is challenging and expensive to sue and try and force that ongoing visitation. So when you're weighing out those pros and cons about what you may gain or lose, it can be tremendously heart-wrenching for that person to try and say, well, am I going to lose access to this grandkid who is, 5 or 6, and I'm going to have another 5 good years with them, so I just have to tolerate what's going on, and my kid's always been a jerk, or so-and-so's always been a jerk, or whatever it is, how can they work around it? But we're going to allow that person to make those choices and try and mitigate the risk, give them whatever tools they need to live the life that they want.
Another aspect to some of these abuse cases can be financial exploitation. And that seems like it would be a growing problem as well during all this isolation of the pandemic.
Yeah, the loneliness factor. Kudos to the Lines for Life in partnering with the state of Oregon to make the senior loneliness line. It was an opportunity for people to get more contact with the outside world. Not seeing people as often just really decreased the amount of opportunities they had for reporting and knowing something's changed with this individual and something went wrong. Adults in America were estimated to have lost $2.9 billion in 2010 to financial exploitation.
Wow.
So that's everything from your overseas romance scams to the overseas lottery scams to just simply, family members exploiting someone. One of the most famous cases that ever came about was Mickey Rooney, the Hollywood actor, where there were tons of lawyers and other professionals involved. And he ended up dying penniless in a nursing home in California because his nephew, who was his business manager, exploited him for millions.
I saw that back in February, Oregon Department of Human Services put out a news release saying that basically family members or those in some sort of close trusted relationship now responsible for close to half of the substantiated financial exploitation cases involving older Oregon adults. And you think it's the scammer on the email or the phone caller, but 1 out of every 2 times it's not.
Well, and we don't really look at the scammer on the email or the phone call as financial exploitation. So we look at those as self-neglect. After age 60, it decreases significantly your ability to detect deception in another individual. You add to that the problems with hearing someone over the phone. Can you really trust them? Are they who they say they are? And it's really easy to get tricked. I've even picked up the phone when I was at someone's house and talked to them and gone like, no, this guy sounds legit. My coworker's looking at me like, Jeff, you're crazy. That's a scammer. Hang up. And, sure enough, it was totally true, but they practice day in and day out, just the rap over and over again of trying to get the money. And it's kind of that shotgun approach of, I'm going to call 1,000 people. I'm going to get 100 on the phone. 10 of them are going to be really in, and 1 of them is going to send money. And so that is part of it. But those are really a self-neglect case where we try and see, is there something else that we can do for the individual? If loneliness is the driving factor, is there a way that we can redirect some of those efforts to a more local, live, in-person response or a safer situation? Can we connect them with the senior center, or can we connect them with a community group, or get them to re-engage with maybe a group of friends or a faith-based community or something else? What can we do to kind of meet that need that the scammer is filling and also direct them to a more safe activity that's going to fulfill their life?
Well, and I was thinking too that in so many of these cases where there's some sort of financial exploitation, a lot of times it's, the bank or the credit union or the financial advisor or, caregiver or someone who starts going, things aren't looking right. Something's going on with their finances, and they're the ones who notice it.
Yeah, absolutely. We get calls from all different kinds of people. We get lots of calls from mandatory reporters, but then we get calls from a lot of voluntary reporters as well. And the calls regarding financial exploitation that we get from banks that, have the resources and the records showing with them, showing that, hey, this is a change. What changed 6 months ago? Oh, so and so moved in. Or what changed a year ago? Oh, so and so passed away and stopped doing these things. Maybe it was a spouse that passed away that was managing the resources for the two of them. And now we have the less capable, less educated in the financial world individual that has to take on managing sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that can be really challenging for a lot of people if they've never had to take that role on before. It's so easy for us to look at something and say, why don't you just do this? Or why don't you just
Yeah.
don't do that? But we're not that individual and we're not
No.
living in that reality or their life. And the idea of giving up some control when you have maybe been on your own since you were 15 and now you're 85 and you are doing just fine after 70 plus years, like who's this young kid to come tell me that I need help? I don't need help. This kid's out of it. So we try and make sure that people have those checks and balances, that we offer the choice. And a lot of people don't realize that, old age, there can be a long, steady decline. And the question of when do we cross that point of incapacity or cross that particular point of needing help is really difficult because you're drawing a specific point in time and it's a long, slow decline down a hill ultimately. So getting the chance to set up and do some planning ahead of times is really what people need to do to be successful. Find that trusted individual that is going to be your voice when you no longer have one, because we all need caregivers at some point throughout our lives. We needed them as kids. We generally need them as elders because very few people just keel over, drop dead all at once. And there's this long, slow decline of conditions that are taking on. You live for quite a while after a stroke or whatever. Medicine has gotten better. The medications have gotten better. So a lot of people are living longer in some of these compromised positions, and it can be really difficult. But finding that person that you trust that is worthy of your trust is very important.
Senior and Disability Services is a division of Lane Council of Governments, and you have a lot of resources available for people who have questions, need advice, need referrals, things like that.
Absolutely. ADRC, Aging and Disability Resource Connection, is more than happy to help with any sort of resources or options going forward. With APS, we look backwards. So we have to look at abuse that has already happened. And so if something bad hasn't happened yet, it's really hard for me to get involved. And ADRC is a great option for people to get involved and to do that kind of planning beyond just senior and disability services. And you can go on Amazon and there's various books about, senior care planning. You can talk to your doctor's office. A lot of them have social workers in there that can talk to you about care planning and setting yourself up for success. If you're out of the area, you can hire a professional care management organization to do an assessment for an individual and try and help with setting up some of those things like the important documents, like a healthcare power of attorney, a financial power of attorney. Maybe you need some estate planning. Maybe you need to talk to an attorney about, getting these things set up. And so all of this, just like we need a physical health checkup, in some ways we need kind of a legal checkup where we make sure that we have our documents and ducks in a row and that things change throughout our life, that what life in old age might have looked like at age 50 might be different now that we're 75 or 80.
June is Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and so as part of that, there's an event that you're doing weekly to just try and share information with folks. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, we have a series of 4 different events that we are doing. We have a panel that involves Bob Morris, the Chief of Police in Junction City, Brenton Gicker from Cahoots, and myself talking about kind of the different multifaceted approaches to what happens when someone calls us and how do we address these things. We also have a Self-Neglect 101 course that I'm going to be teaching, talking about what to see and kind of some of those warning signs and ideas, and then how you might be able to get help for the individual. Deb Holloway and Jessica Justman, who are two other adult protective services specialists, will be working through a mock case and a screening that goes on. And so all of those are up on the Senior and Disability Services Facebook page. I've got a flyer. They're all free through Eventbrite. And we're really excited to be getting the word out because it is so common. 1 in 10 every year report some sort of elder abuse.
The topic title for all of these presentations is Let's Talk About Abuse. And because it's happening every Tuesday, it's Let's Talk About Abuse Tuesdays as part of Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And Senior and Disability Services, if people want to go online and find out about that and all the other resources, how do they find that?
Yeah, so you can just Google Senior and Disability Services, Lane County. It comes right up in that. You can call, our main number is 541-682-4038. That gets you to the phone tree. You can call Adult Protective Services directly, 541-682-4140. You can call Aging and Disability Resource Connection, 541-682-3353. And any of these people are more than happy to get you to the right department if you pick the wrong option. The way that I look at any call coming into us, even if it's not a case of abuse that we can get involved in, somebody's calling me with a problem, and I want to try and offer them a chance to solve that problem and refer them to an appropriate resource.
It's a really committed staff you have there too. I mean, everyone seems to bring a real passion to helping people.
Yeah, I often say that we're in the business of helping people, and so we're very lucky in what we get to do. I love getting to do these types of events because it's my one chance to meet someone when something bad hasn't happened. And so these are a real uplifting portion of my job. But there's a lot of long-term employees, many with more than a decade worth of experience that work for Senior and Disability Services and for Adult Protective Services, and just really care about making sure people are getting the chance to live the life that they want and be free of abuse. And elder abuse has happened in my family as well. And we've had to get help from Adult Protective Services out of county because we weren't there and close to the individuals, but we loved the people and, we had to ask for help. And so I tell people, if it's happened in my family, it's absolutely happening in your family because, I might think I'm a smart guy, but I can't prevent it all. We are probably 30 years behind child welfare. The first technical mention of anything related to elder abuse was in 1975 in the British Medical Journal, where a doctor wrote about, quote, granny battering. And I think it's interesting how language has changed with us and how I've seen the policies change with Adult Protective Services over just the nearly 10 years that I've been doing it, and how the law continues to develop and evolve and the way that we look at people. And so it's amazing to see the services and everything that we are doing going forward to make sure that people are empowered and safe and living a life that is free of abuse.
You got final thoughts or anything else you want to add?
If you see something, say something. If you love someone, it's okay to call us, but it's also okay to ask them, hey, do you need help? Hey, would you like a hand with this? Hey, it looks like you're having a tough time, because sometimes it's that authority that you have with the individual that's going to get them to accept it, as opposed to me coming into their home as a stranger. And I just really appreciate people taking time to think about this and to put thought into it. We're all going to get old at some point, and so we all have kind of some skin in the game and need to commit to making sure that elder abuse happens less and less in our community.
And once again, that toll-free line to dial statewide, it works.
It is 855-503-SAFE, 855-503-7233, and that's anywhere in the state of Oregon.
Jeff Clark with Adult Protective Services, part of Senior and Disability Services of Lane County. Thanks for being our guest this morning on Community Forum.
Community Forum is a public affairs presentation of Mackenzie River Broadcasting. If you have questions, comments, or your organization is interested in taking part in a future program, we'd like to hear from you. Send your letter to Mackenzie River Broadcasting, Attention Public Affairs, 925 Country Club Road, Suite 200, Eugene, Oregon, 97401. Thanks for joining us. Tune in again next week.